This is TWiT.
We have a winner. The rose goes to Jeff Immelt, former chairman of GE. We're talking about maybe, actually it's only rumor, but it comes from Kara Swisher at Recode. She knows everything. The next CEO of Uber.
Yeah, and I had sources on this as well. I wound up writing about this for TechCrunch. Kara definitely broke the news here. But yeah, I mean, it's not for sure decided on, but
the board likes him, and that's a problem because the board doesn't like a lot of people. Right?
Well, the board has a lot of issues right now. I don't even know where to begin there, but yeah, I think ultimately, I mean, I did hear from one source that you know, he was a little disappointed because he didn't think that this would be the person they would have picked had they not been in this situation. But given the situation, he thought it would be a good choice going forward. Another source was fairly excited about Jeff. So both of them felt that this wasn't totally decided, but it looked like they were getting close at Uber. So
he's not a woman. I think early on everybody was saying, well, to solve the problems Uber has, you got to make the next CEO a woman. Do you agree?
I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings there. I mean, sure, I would have been excited to see a woman in that job, but ultimately, I think they should pick the best person for the job, and I think they had conversations.
Who wants the job?
That's the other problem there. Is they have a lot of complications here. I think some of the best women for the job didn't want the job.
No interest in the job.
I mean, there were reports about Meg Whitman, and then there were reports that Travis, the former CEO, he was telling people that he was Steve Jobs in it and that he might come back. I mean,
but the board
I don't know.
was quick to quash that, by the way.
Right,
they immediately said,
right.
no, he's not. Travis Kalanick is not coming back.
Sure, but he's on the board.
There was a little bit of this kind of manipulation going on with the shareholders and the employees.
Right, totally. I mean, he's on the board, so he still does have some voting power, and he still has his friends in the company who are very loyal to them. And I think some CEOs, or actually many CEOs that would be qualified for this job, wouldn't want it. They wouldn't want someone like that kind of watching over their shoulder. And I don't know if he's hoping that they'd fail, but something is going on there. And so Benchmark clearly didn't like it either. That's their early investor. And so there's a lawsuit there.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when Satya Nadella became CEO at Microsoft, everybody said, oh, you don't want that. Ballmer and Gates are on the board. Imagine. But he made it work. In fact, forced Ballmer out. But he made it work, and he really transformed Microsoft. So you could look at that and say, well, no, I think so Immelt was the CEO at GE. Right. Was he a good CEO?
Well, the stock didn't do well at all under his tenure there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he seems to be a well-respected business person. It's a very large company that he was running.
Sure. He's amazing.
$223 billion market cap, so it's like 3 Ubers. So, I mean, I guess from that perspective, he's been running, a giant company.
He stepped down. He ran it from 2001. He stepped down in June. He was there for 16 years.
Yeah, so
he got them through the financial crisis. Oh gosh, don't want to hear video from you.
I hate autoplay.
Thank you for not doing that at TechCrunch. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think that there's a lot of mixed sentiment about him. Obviously, he was there for a long time. So
he succeeded Jack Welch, who was a legend.
Sure, and so. But yeah, I mean, what I did hear from one person involved with the company was that he didn't think that his background was the right background for a fast-growing technology company.
It's very different running a blue chip,
like conglomerate,
long-time conglomerate.
Uber's not even public, right?
No, GE was public.
No, Uber is not public.
Uber.
Uber's not public.
It's a startup.
But they want to be. I mean, they've said all sorts of things under Travis that they didn't want to be. But I mean, ultimately, it's paper money until there's an exit. Right. And so unless someone wants to buy them for almost $70 billion, I think they're going to have to eventually go public.
What do you need to? Who do they need? What do you need to put Uber back on the track? You've got lawsuits against Google's Waymo. You've got the shareholder lawsuit or the investor lawsuit from Benchmark. You've got what some say is a toxic bro culture. And yet, I have to say, it's
some say
many,
that.
many, everybody. But I have to say, I still use Uber. I'm ashamed sometimes to admit it. I like Uber. So you have a brand that's very successable. Of course, it loses money on every ride. It subsidizes the majority of the cost of that ride, so it's not a big money maker. This is a tough job.
The real business of Uber is self-driving cars. So the current drivers are simply there.
That's what the market
to be meat robots until they can.
That's what the investors are. That's the decacorn is because not because of the ride sharing thing, but because someday. That's a big...
The whole model...
cut on costs when that happens, but yeah, it's sad for
Yeah, because
the
the costs are drivers.
Although I think they did say at one point that they're never going to get rid of all of the drivers, but...
We'll keep 3 drivers.
We're going to wait till they die out.
We're
not going to replace any drivers who leave.
The thing to keep in mind, though, this isn't about replacing the current world of livery drivers. This is about replacing the current world of automobiles. The future of self-driving cars is going to be an Uber-like model. It's going to be...
Is it going to be Uber? Is it going to be Waymo? Is it going to be Apple? Is it going to be, let's not forget Ford, General Motors. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are probably better positioned, frankly, than Uber to do this. Uber is a taxi company right now, just because they have, they've done R&D. They don't, certainly Google has a huge lead in autonomous vehicles, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't know why Uber is seen as being like...
Well, because they brain drained Carnegie Mellon and took some of the brightest minds in self-driving AI to come in and work on their company. So this is one of the biggest challenges right now, is that so many companies are doing self-driving cars that the number of people who specialize in the many different areas of technology are really hard to get. And Uber's got a lot of them.
Here's the problem. Sure, but they don't have enough runway to do it. In other words, they're going to run at the burn rate they've got, which is billions of dollars a year. They don't have enough time to create a sustainable self-driving car ecosystem. They can't turn that corner. I don't think they have what it takes to turn that corner. They may have the people, they may have the PhDs, but it's a lot more than that to make that happen.
Yeah.
Including, by the way, regulatory issues. And Uber's not as a mixed
issues. They have a lawsuit with Waymo.
Yeah.
Google's self-driving car.
Well, that's one
Alphabet's.
problem.
Yeah.
Lewandowski, I think it's now kind of accepted, took Waymo's intellectual property. We don't know. That's the suit.
That's an ongoing lawsuit.
It's an ongoing suit.
The move to self-driving cars is comparable to the move from horse and buggy to automobiles. And during that transitionary period, there was all kinds of weird political, crazy, legal liability. There was all kinds of stuff that now do not matter at all. And a company like Tesla can come along decades after the automobile giants had already established their core,
walk right in.
and is walking right in, is probably going to succeed. I don't think there's any reason to believe that Uber will or won't be dominant in the self-driving car industry.
Well, that's the problem.
Exactly.
If they were a lock, I'd say, well, they're worth it. But they're not a lock. They're far from a lock. In fact, I think they're going to have real problems because they're going to run out of money. And I don't know, how many times can you go back to the well to these investors and say, hey, another $20 billion, and I think we might have this. You can't.
Yeah, they've already gotten money from Saudi Arabia and all over the world, so they're going to have to keep looking for rich people. No, I think eventually they're going to have to go public, but it might be a down round IPO, which is what we're seeing now when they go public beneath their last market valuation. Their market cap will be likely smaller, but we'll see. I mean, these days, companies like Square did that, and then they eventually did well in the stock market.
Yeah.
So it's no longer considered the end of the world if you do a down round IPO, as long as you build a great public company.
A down round is where you were by the venture capitalists said to be worth $100 billion. Then you go out to the markets and they say, no, you're worth 80 billion or 70.
So, yeah, exactly. So I mean, Uber was said to have last raised a $68.5 billion valuation. That's often rounded up to 70. It's really hard to justify that right now. I mean, I personally thought it was always hard to justify that valuation, and especially with all of this happening. So if they went public today, I mean, there's almost no way that they would be valued at that. But maybe if they wait a couple of years, they'll grow into it. I mean, really, it has to do with the public investors.
What's their
and
runway now? Do we know what their burn rate is and how much
they
time
have
they have?
shared some of those quarterly
It's like not
numbers.
long. It's a couple of years, 3 years, something like that.
Well, yeah, I'd have to take a look. I mean, they've shared some of their financial numbers, but not all of them.
Right.
I mean, I think there are people who will still continue to invest in Uber. I mean, reports have said that SoftBank, which has a $100 billion fund,
They've got a big
is
fund.
interested in investing. And so they have money to keep Uber alive. So I'm not worried about Uber going out of business. I don't even think that's close to a possibility, but whether it's going to achieve its private market valuation will be a big deal for the whole industry, because a lot of LPs, the investors who get where VCs get their money from, are in multiple venture funds. And if a lot of those venture funds were counting on Uber and it's not as good of an outcome as they thought it would be, then that's going to be a problem. I mean, particularly for the investors who got in later. I mean, the investors who got in early, they're going to have a wonderful outcome, really, no matter what. It's just a matter of how many billions they'll be worth. But
Calacanis is going to be insufferable after that.
Going to be insufferable.
Oh, that's
I love you, Jason. I know
He's
you're
going to be
listening.
filling in for me next month, actually. Well, we watch with interest.